Good morning, everyone. Mr. Tweedy here for another one of our 15 minutes of your time segments. I am so pleased to be joined this morning by our town clerk in the town of Holton, Cathy O'Leary, as we have an election coming up, and that will take place next week. There is going to be some positions available here locally, and then there are some referendum questions, so we wanted to push some information out to you. So first of all, Cathy, thank you for your willingness to join us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I think this is great. I know Mrs. Fagnant had been interested in having you speak to her social studies classes as well. This way we can push out to all students. Can you first talk about what a town clerk does? Why does that position exist at the Holton Town office?
Well, one of the responsibilities, of course, is to set up and run an election every year, and you have to work with the state and of course the town, and sometimes even the school when the school has the budget elections. Mm-hmm. And the other duties of the clerk, they're pretty varied. They're always called the keeper of the records, and so there's a lot of history involved that you have to maintain. And there's different licensing processes: dog hunting, fishing, motor vehicle. There's a long list.
Sure.
But it's a job that's always the same, but yet it's always different every day.
Well, it sounds like a very interesting job and certainly an important one. Cathy, before someone's allowed to vote, though, they have to register to vote. Can you talk about what that process is, how it works? And then, as I understand it, there are some new rules in regards to that in the state of Maine. So can you talk about that process?
Sure. When you register to vote, you have to provide ID and proof of your residence, which is actually your street or road address, not a PO box. And a lot of things work for that. There's your driver's license, if you have a school ID, state ID, and for residents, anything that has your street name on it, like mail to you. We have a list we go by, so we always try to help people especially students, are a little harder. But every year they come up with all these different new rules, which is good. It's always to enhance the election. But one of the most recent ones is that actually, when you're 16, you can pre-register, they call it. So the benefit of that is that you'd already be in the system when you become of age. And it's still 18, but it's a little confusing. But if you're 17 at the time of a primary, for example, next June is a primary. If you're 17 then and going to be 18 by November, you can actually vote in that primary.
Check either yes or no to indicate whether you have
that's
previously
kind of
registered
exciting
to vote,
for
either
students.
in or outside of
Yeah,
Maine.
no, that's
If you check
absolutely
yes,
exciting.
you must provide the city or
When I was a
town,
government
county,
teacher,
and
we used to
state
talk about some of the various
where you
types of
previously
ballots,
registered
and
to
different
vote.
states are allowed to
We're
have
almost
different
done.
forms of ballots as they
Let's
get
check
to
out
run
the other side
their own
of our
elections.
registration card.
Can you talk about what some of the different types of ballots are here in Maine? And we, that's everything from, say, absentee ballots or early voting. Can you just talk about what that looks like in our state?
Sure. And the absentee ballot, that's becoming more and more popular for people. There's many ways you can obtain a ballot. And of course, you have to be registered. Once you're registered, you can request online, and it comes direct to this office, and we mail it to wherever the address is. And you could come into the office and actually fill out an application. You can take the ballot yourself and then return it later, as long as we have the ballot back by election day. And you can also, an immediate family member can come in and fill out the application for you and take the ballot. And there's also, you can actually just call yourself and then we mail the ballot. So there's various ways to do it to make it easy. And then it's a little different. That's absentee balloting. We don't do early voting as some areas do, just because we don't have the facilities, because you have to do it for a long period of time. And we would have to tie the rec center up, and But the absentee balloting is very popular and very accessible for people.
So you talked about absentee ballot mailing the ballot out. Can you explain, so for some of our students, let's say if they're a junior, senior in high school, they're thinking about going away to college or somewhere in the next year or so, what happens? Let's say I'm a college senior and I'm 18, but I know that I've already been accepted to the University of Maine at Orono to begin next fall. Do I vote in Holton? Do I vote in Orono? What makes that determination?
Well, if you're a student, they have special rules for students. If you are going to college in Orono, you have the option of continuing to register here in town like you are and get an absentee the ways that I said. Your parents could pick it up, or you could call or go online. But also students can register to vote in the town where they're, like in Orono, it would be Orono. You can go there with your school credentials and they will let you vote right there. So you have a little bit more options.
Another item too that I wanted to ask you about, it's not one I actually on the email list of questions, but I'm confident you can answer this, is the concept of ranked choice voting is new. Not new as a concept, I guess, but new in practice.
Yes.
As of just a couple of years ago, we're one of only a few states who actually do that statewide. Can you talk about how ranked choice voting works?
It will be in effect next year, of course, during the governor's race, and it was in effect last year for the presidential. It's a little bit confusing. We do have a lot of information available for people to help them understand. But it's basically you can, like, if there's 5 people running, you can actually choose, like, you want someone to be your first choice, and you can go right down the list, second, third, fourth, fifth. And then if you just want one vote, though, if you just want to do your first choice, you can also do that, and that will count. And then the state actually compiles all those. We only would register the number 1 vote, and then from the machines and the information from the machines, the state would do the rest. And then they come into play if one person doesn't have more than 50% of the vote.
So we have some upcoming, I know, town council and school board positions to fill. Ranked choice voting will not be used on those. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's
okay.
correct. Municipal will not be ranked choice.
So let's talk about some of those items that are on this upcoming ballot or as part of the voting process. I just mentioned, I saw an article in the paper. I think there's 5 people vying for 3 school board positions. Can you talk about what other features of the ballot there will be?
We have, and the municipal election is always every November also. And this year there's town council positions, and we also have Holton Water Company Board, Cary Library Board, and we have Board of Budget Review, and we have, of course, the school board. Now this year we have for the town council, there's two, I guess say that again.
Okay.
There's a 3-year term, there's 2 3-year terms, and then there's 2 2-year terms. There's only 1 name under each, but this is one of those years we've had some declared write-ins. So those will come into play, which is a little different. That doesn't always happen. And then, of course, the school board, like you said, there's 3 positions and 5 people running. So that'll be a contest. The town doesn't have any referendums this year.
Statewide, commercials, the CMP corridor, and I'm sure that there are other issues that are, I don't know if that's the only one, to be honest. That's one that you see the most commercials in sight,
Right.
Therefore. So there will be at the state level.
Besides that one, there's a transportation bond, and there's also kind of an interesting one on, it's a constitutional amendment to do with your right to, I'm looking at the wording because individuals have the natural, inherent, and unalienable right to grow, raise, harvest, produce, and consume food of their own choosing. So that's an interesting one. And that there's also there's a guide that the state puts out every year, and it's interesting. And I will actually send it up for Mrs. Bagnett to see, because they actually put in letters from people, pros and cons. So, and Attorney General explains it. Some of them get complicated. So this is very helpful.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, forward that on and be able to share with our advisors as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Last question, Kathy. I have to assume then, based on all the information you've shared, as a town clerk, you must feel at least some sense of importance in staying a little bit apolitical. I guess it's important that people can see you. I mean, you certainly can vote, and you're entitled like any other citizen to be able to do that and express your own opinion through the ballot. However, on a personal level, you must feel it's important to try to remain as neutral as possible.
Oh, absolutely. That's very important. And that, well, you want the voting, and it's always, everything's just so out there. It's open to the public. You don't want anyone to think anything else is going on but that. So it's very important. And we have at the polls, if anybody is interested, there's always a place, there's a viewing area. So even if, students were interested and, they're not able to vote, they could just watch the process. And sometimes it's interesting. This election coming up won't be as busy as last year, but it's always a process. You always have to set it up like you're going to have all of your 3,800 voters there. So you never know.
And I know our Nathan Graham has helped volunteer at the polls many years. He's doing the same thing this year. If there's anyone out there who is interested in volunteering, Kathy, what might that process look like?
Well, they contact the town office, and the list of volunteers is actually approved by the parties, Democrat and Republican, way in advance before the election. But we're now allowed to use other unenrolled and occasionally, other people, because we can't always get who's on the list. So definitely call the office, because we always like to keep our list up to date and have more people than we need. You never know.
Great. Thank you for all that you do. My appreciation for you giving us some time here this morning and helping get this information out to students. It can be confusing. Sometimes the processes change. So being able to keep our students up to date is important. And I thank you for being a part of that process.
Well, thank you. And really our staff, but they're always very helpful. If anyone just wants to come in and ask any questions, we're always there.
Great. Cathy O'Leary, thank you for 15 minutes of your time.